Chapter 1346. Sacred Wood. Su Ming's expression was much more indifferent than before. His gaze was even more profound, and he seemed to have no temper, like a pool of clear water. He was calm and indifferent. It seemed like even if the world was destroyed before him, his expression would not change, unless someone stepped on his tail. Boundless Tao. I didn't expect that with this epiphany, I would be able to come into contact with boundless Tao realm for the first time. It's a pity that I don't have enough time. If I could remain immersed in the epiphany for 10,000 years or even longer, then perhaps I would be able to step into boundless Tao in one go. Su Ming might feel slight pity that he could not do so, but he understood that he did not have enough time. The destruction was around the corner. If he continued with the epiphany, then when he woke up and everything was no longer around, the sadness and grief he was supposed to feel might be buried in the passage of time, and he would never be able to find them. After all, the art of time was not an art, did not allow him to work wonders. I might not be able to truly step into boundless Tao realm, but I now have a wisp of boundless Tao realm's presence, and I managed to manifest. The Tao divinity. Old man extermination spoke of. Su Ming's third eye shone at the center of his brow. He could vaguely see an illusory figure sitting cross-legged within it. That figure exuded an incredibly terrifying presence, and it was so strong that even the complete harmonious Morris Alba would instinctively avoid it. After all, it was the Tao divinity Su Ming had obtained when he took the first step in understanding the boundless Tao realm. It was the divinity of boundless Tao. It was like a seed and also like a qualification. Only those who had manifested a Tao divinity could step into boundless Tao realm. This was also why Old Man Extermination had been so confident previously that Su Ming would not be able to be successful in gaining an epiphany. Before trying to gain his epiphany, Su Ming had not gained the right to manifest his Tao divinity. But right then, it was different. With a Tao divinity, he had ascended to a higher state of being. At that moment, there was practically no difference between him and Arid Triad. In fact, in certain aspects, Su Ming was even stronger. Even though he had not reached the peak of the later stage of Avicania realm, he could already sense his limits, and he had gained a direction. Cultivation base as well as power are just complements in the path to search for answers. I don't have to pay too much attention to them. As Su Ming mumbled to himself, he flung his arm and looked at the space around him. The process of trying to gain his epiphany for over 100 years had lasted for about the blink of an eye to Su Ming. His memories were of the moment all that time ago. However, he had a feeling as if they had been covered in dust. It was due to an insignificant discomfort naturally formed due to the change of time. While walking through the galaxy, Su Ming gradually stopped bothering about the insignificant discomfort. When he looked around himself, he felt as if he could vaguely see the planet formed by the boy's original form. He could also see the huge sacred wood floating in the galaxy. Before he left the expanse cosmos formed by the fourth wing, Su Ming had to go to the sacred wood and meet the boy and the others again so that he could deliver their legacies into the world that may or may not exist. Once he finished doing that, he would leave the fourth expanse cosmos as well as Dark Dawn and Saint Defire's camps. He would return to Arid Triad, since the three black-robed men, be it Xianxia or Xianxia, had already headed there. Su Ming's morning Dao's will was observing all of it. In fact, once Su Ming obtained his Tao divinity, he had a feeling that if he wanted, he just needed to close his eyes, and when he opened them again, true morning Tao worlds would manifest another version of him. He was omnipresent. This was what Su Ming understood once he gained his Tao divinity. With an indifferent expression, he walked through the galaxy until a huge sacred wood appeared before him. It was hundreds of feet long. At that moment, it had a great presence that could shock people. Su Ming stopped moving. When he looked into the distance, he spread his will and had it descend on the sacred wood. The strange power from the sacred wood which had once blocked Su Ming's will from investigating it appeared again, making it difficult for him to proceed. He could not send his will into all of the sacred wood. Su Ming's expression remained as calm as ever. He instantly opened his third eye, where his Tao divinity sat and meditated. At that moment, he opened his eyes as well, and at the instant he did so, the Tao divinity's third eye at the center of its brow opened as well, and within it was another figure who was also sitting and meditating. That figure too opened its eyes. There was no end to it. Su Ming did not know just how many figures there were. It was the mysterious aspect of Tao divinities. The moment they opened their third eyes, Su Ming's will gained a hint of boundless Tao realm's presence. It was like a general leading an army of soldiers. Once it appeared, it immediately surged into the sacred wood, and all forms of power blocking its path were instantly dissolved upon touch. This allowed Su Ming to see into the sacred wood's world. There were countless cave abodes in the sacred wood. Most of them were occupied by sleeping cultivators, but when Su Ming's will entered, the hearts of all the cultivators who were sleeping or had long since woken up trembled, and they instantly opened their eyes. Shock appeared on their faces. The old monsters who had lived there for an unknown number of eons instantly felt their hearts thump in fear. At the same time, they heard a calm voice in their ears. The voice was not loud. It only echoed faintly in space. It did not sound at all majestic, and neither did it sound overbearing, but the meaning behind its words was filled with a domineering air that was not at all hidden. It was laid bare to the world, showing off an air of superiority. "I'll be taking this wood. You have 10 breaths to leave." Su Ming spoke calmly, and once he finished, he did not add anything more. Instead, he waited calmly for the 10 breaths to pass. The sacred wood was silent. When the 5th breath arrived, some of the powerful warriors flew out. Upon rushing out, they saw Su Ming in the distance, and their hearts trembled. They immediately recognized him as the person who had been walking in the galaxy in a daze for over 100 years. After all, while most of the powerful warriors in the sacred wood were asleep, there were some who were awake. They did not stay for long periods of time in the sacred wood either. They would occasionally venture out, and they had either personally seen or heard from the others about Su Ming. They were not unfamiliar with him. During the 8th breath, only 2/10 of the cultivators in the sacred wood chose to leave the place, but they did not go far. Instead, they stared at Su Ming coldly. They wanted to see just how conceited this person was that he would think he could stand against nearly 10,000 powerful warriors in the sacred wood with just his own strength. After all, they were all powerful warriors from their own eons, and they had the right to not be destroyed by the disaster. Each of them had the power that could cause the galaxy to tremble when they stomped down. At the instant 10 breaths went by, Su Ming lifted his head. His expression was as indifferent as ever. He only lifted his right hand to point at the huge sacred wood. "With my will and my Tao divinity, become smaller." Once he declared that he wanted the sacred wood to become smaller, the huge log let out a loud bang that shook the entire expanse cosmos. The log trembled viciously, and the cultivators in the area who were watching with cold sneers on their faces were dumbfounded. They personally saw the sacred wood shrink to nearly a size smaller. At that moment, a huge storm rose up in their hearts. They were all shocked, and disbelief showed up on their faces. In their minds, the sacred wood was indestructible, could not transform, and in fact, was something that could not be slighted. There were some people who tried to turn the sacred wood into their treasure before, but none of them had succeeded. No matter how strong they could not do so. In fact, those who tried to refine the log would suffer great backlash and would die miserable deaths. However, right before their eyes, the sacred wood shrank when Su Ming pointed at it. The shock delivered to all the people watching was no different from 1,000,000 lightning bolts roaring in their minds. If that was the case for those outside, then it was even more so for the countless powerful warriors who had chosen to ignore Su Ming and remain in the sacred wood. Their expressions changed drastically. They could clearly sense the sacred wood becoming smaller, but the size of their own bodies did not change. All of their cave abodes became much smaller. In fact, those cave abodes which were not big to begin with even became too narrow for anyone to sit within them. At that moment, almost all the cultivators who had remained in the sacred wood chose to get out of the log as their expressions changed. Their bodies instantly appeared outside the sacred wood. Some of them might have lived for a very long time, but were still very hot-tempered people, and when they rushed out, they immediately started shouting loudly. But their shouts only lasted for an instant. They went silent when Su Ming made his second declaration that he wanted the sacred wood to become smaller. Their shouts turned into the thumping of their hearts. Become smaller. The still huge sacred wood shuddered again and shrank by one size once more. At that moment, it no longer looked like it was 1,000,000 feet long. Instead, it was only hundreds of thousands of feet long. The change in its size did not cause any cultivators to die. After all, Su Ming gave them enough time to leave. Because of it, all the cultivators from the sacred wood were levitating in the galaxy around the area. They watched the sacred wood, now only hundreds of thousands of feet long after shrinking twice, and the apprehension they felt turned into terror in their hearts. They could imagine how their bodies would have been squashed by their cave abodes if they had insisted on staying inside. When Su Ming declared that he wanted the sacred wood to become smaller the third time, the sacred wood shuddered again, and as all the people's pupils shrank, it became smaller again. This time, it did not become a size smaller, but was reduced to only thousands of feet long. Su Ming seized the space in the direction of the sacred wood with his right hand, and it immediately charged towards him. While doing so, it shrank again. When it landed in Su Ming's palm, it had already shrunk to the size of a palm. Chapter 1347. Ceaseless greed. The hundreds of thousands of cultivators who saw the event were rendered speechless, and a chill ran down their backs. The hot-tempered ones from before also felt their hearts tremble, and they did not dare to say a single word. To them, power was everything, and Su Ming showed his by controlling the sacred wood that no one had been able to refine for countless years. The hundreds of thousands of cultivators in the area knew just how powerful Su Ming was for having been able to do such a thing. His strength had already surpassed theirs by far. No one could say who was the first to wrap their fist in their palm to bow to Su Ming, but soon, the others followed suit and wrapped their fists in their palms and bowed to Su Ming. Respect coming from the bottom of their hearts appeared on their faces. This was power, and to them, everything in the world was decided by power. Before he gained his epiphany, Su Ming had the same belief, but right then, he understood that power was just a complement in the path of seeking the truth, an auxiliary that made the path smoother. It was just something additional that would never become the foundation of the path. Once anyone reversed the positions of the addition and the foundation, they would forever walk on the wrong path while searching for the truth. Su Ming lowered his head and cast a glance at the sacred wood on his palm. The log was not completely unrefinable, as believed by the others due to what they had tried over countless years. It was because the item belonged to Old Man Extermination. Unless they had the same power as him, it was impossible to obtain it. As for why Old Man Extermination had placed it in the middle of the galaxy instead of taking it away, Su Ming did not want to form too many assumptions about it. He only felt that this item was pretty good and could be used as a stepping stone if he wanted to walk into the vast expanse someday in the future. That was why he took it with him. In fact, when he looked at the sacred wood, Su Ming guessed that perhaps the gap on the butterfly's fourth wing had come from the huge log of wood crashing into it from the universe beyond. Su Ming clenched his fist and put away the sacred wood, then cast a glance at the cultivators wrapping their fists in their palms and bowing to him. He sighed softly. Those people were happy because they did not know that the disaster 300-something years later would bring them unavoidable destruction. Sometimes, ignorance was bliss. Su Ming shook his head, then turned around to leave. He wanted to settle one last matter in heaven-lacking expanse cosmos before he left. While walking, his footsteps were not quick, but when his feet landed in the galaxy, it seemed to become smaller. With 2 steps, he saw the planet manifested by the boy. He saw the boy, the purple-robed old man, the young man in white, and 4 other strangers he had never seen on the planet. The 7 people had manifested their legacy items and waited on the planet that symbolized beauty, never leaving it. It seemed like they wanted to live through the last few hundred years in that place to look at the final brilliance of their universe. They were also waiting for Su Ming, their only hope as of then. Beyond the prosperous cities on the planet, there was a sycamore tree with red leaves. Su Ming stood there with the setting sun behind him. The sun was red, and it served as a background for the leaves. They did not compete with each other in terms of beauty. The only thing that could be felt when they appeared together was a hint of melancholy that had drifted over from some unknown area. When the autumn wind blew, when the leaves fell, when a person turned their head around, perhaps they would no longer see that figure standing under the sycamore tree nor the setting sun behind it. Su Ming watched the setting sun illuminating the cities with its final rays of light and the scattered lamps lit in the houses, feeling as if he was watching the whole universe's rise and fall. He continued watching until the boy walked over from the distance beside him. Then, the purple-robed old man and the young man in white also showed up. They did not bother Su Ming, but instead stood by the side quietly with respectful gazes. Their 4 other friends also stood nearby. They waited respectfully while watching him. Su Ming was their hope. Even if they were going to die the next day, it was fine as long as their dows and their epiphanies could be passed down. As long as their bloodline would not disappear. This was a mindset low-ranked cultivators would not understand, but they were not the only ones. Some high-ranked cultivators could not understand it either. But the few who did would leave behind countless legends and hopes in the world of cultivation so that there would constantly be people who could practice cultivation in the universe. They had decided to offer their whole life's worth of hard work to the path of cultivation. The sun gradually set as if symbolizing harmonious Morus Alba's world. After coming down, it might no longer appear the next morning. It was just like the red sycamore leaves. Once they fell, they would never be able to return to the sycamore tree and dye it red. They could only direct their resentment at the wind for having arrived too soon, at the season for changing too soon, and themselves for falling. Su Ming sighed softly and looked at the houses in the cities gradually lighting up. He watched the sky slowly turn dark. He might like night, but during that moment, he would rather have had everything remain the same for all eternity. "You're here," he said softly. The 7 beside Su Ming raised their heads and looked at him before they wrapped their fists in their palms and bowed to him. No one spoke. At that moment, no one wanted to speak. Everything they wanted to convey was in their bows. They could not say it, and they did not need to say it. Su Ming shifted his gaze away from the cities in the distance and looked at the boy. The boy was also staring at Su Ming. Their gazes met, and Su Ming saw the sadness as well as the hint of hope on the boy's face. "Your Tao is very unique. It also touched me very deeply. It's just like your Daoist monastic name. Ban Bu Zi. Perhaps while you walk through your Tao and open your eyes, everything in existence will serve to be a complement to you, and when you close your eyes, you will serve as a complement to everything in existence. Ban Bu Zi, it means half a step, but Bu also sounds similar to complement, making it seem as if you and everything in existence are 2 halves complementing each other." The boy shuddered, and a bright light lit up in his eyes. He stood stunned for some time, before he wrapped his fist in his palm and bowed deeply to Su Ming. "Your disciple has learned his lesson." It was the first time since he had become the strongest of his eon and learned that he could survive the disaster of his eon that he referred to himself as a disciple and performed the actions of one. He referred to himself as a disciple, but that did not mean that he was a student under Su Ming's tutelage, neither was it a title referring to differences in seniority. Instead, it was a form of gratitude to a person who bestowed knowledge upon him, and there was no point in caring about seniority, because there was no difference in seniority when it came to the path of cultivation. There was no doubt Su Ming had moved further than all of them in the pursuit of truth, and when he turned his head around, he gave them an epiphany, and hence, he obtained their respect. "Your Tao is disheveled and jumbled up. You have only fused everything together and understood it after you gathered all of your power to perceive it. It is like how all things will return to their roots. To fulfill the ambitions of those who seek to perform great feats, your Tao became the ocean, but it will never be able to drown your thoughts," Su Ming said slowly while looking at the purple-robed old man. The purple-robed old man was silent. After a long while, he smiled. He did not speak, but neither did he bow. "As for you, you are the peak of all sword cultivators. When you draw your sword, your will to kill is firm and not gentle. These are my words for you. There is nothing in the sky that cannot be cut and nothing on the ground that cannot shatter. They will not be cut and not shatter only because the sword has not been drawn." Once the young man in white heard his words, he took a few steps back, lifted his head to look at Su Ming, then wrapped his fist in his palm and bowed to him. "Your disciple has learned his lesson. I have never met the 4 of you before, but since you have made your decision, I will not destroy your hopes, but I do not know whether that world exists." Su Ming cast his gaze on the other 4 people. All of them had unique features. One of them was incredibly big and built. When he stood there, the air around him distorted slightly. Su Ming could tell at first glance that he had suppressed his body. If he released his full power, his body would definitely become even larger. In fact, there were indistinct stars at the center of that person's brow. Clearly, he had a bloodline that was similar to that of the ancient gods. In truth, there were similarities that could be found in all the races between each eon, and that person belonged to the bloodline of the ancient gods in a certain eon within harmonious Morus Alba. The person next to him was a woman. She had a dignified look, and Su Ming could see a vague shadow behind her. It was an existence that was green from head to toe, had a single horn, and resembled a monster. The third person did not bother to hide his true form. Black fog spread from his whole body. It was thick and had great corrosive properties. His face could not be seen. Only a pair of red eyes could be detected from within the fog, but nonetheless, Su Ming could see the person's true form. It was a huge creature with 2 horns on its head. The last person was a middle-aged man dressed in green robes. He looked like a sage and was filled with an ethereal air. Su Ming was not unfamiliar with his presence. It belonged to those in the world of immortals, which he had seen before. Su Ming only cast a glance at those people and did not speak. Instead, the moment the sky turned dark, he lifted his right hand. When he was about to swing his arm, a glint suddenly shone in his eyes. They arrived so soon? As Su Ming mumbled under his breath, he closed his eyes. When he opened them again, his gaze returned to normal. He swung his right hand, and the entire sky roared, turning into a huge vortex. That vortex spun swiftly, and Su Ming opened his third eye. Within it, his Tao divinity opened its eyes as well. Su Ming used his Tao divinity to guide his will so that he could open a crack leading to the world that may or may not exist. Send your legacies in there. When Su Ming spoke faintly, the boy opened his mouth resolutely, and a black statue flew out from his mouth into the vortex in the sky. The eyes of the young man in white sparkled. What he delivered was the sword he always carried behind his back. Once it was sent out, even the vortex in the sky shuddered, as if it was about to stop rotating. It was a testament to how great the will in his sword was. The purple-robed old man swung his arm, and as the center of his brow squirmed, a crack opened up. A crystal the size of a fist flew out from it. The crystal shone with black light and charged into the sky. As for the other 4, they sent out their legacy items as well. A total of 7 items were sucked into the vortex, but the next moment, the crystal sent by the purple-robed old man looked as if it could not withstand the force of the vortex, and cracks appeared on it. As cracking sounds shot into the air, the number of cracks increased, but the purple-robed old man did not show any changes on his expression. However, if anyone took a closer look, they would find that he was only an empty shell. At the instant the other people's expressions changed, the black crystal that was about to disappear into the vortex shattered, and a small humanoid flew out from within. The humanoid figure resembled the purple-robed man. He let out a shrill scream, voicing his unwillingness to admit defeat, and tried to rush back into the vortex, but in the end, as the vortex rotated, he was crushed to powder. The purple-robed old man's body was reduced to ash during that moment as well, and he disappeared from the world. Chapter 1348. Su Ming, I Want to Cry. The tunnel formed by the vortex in the sky was a path Su Ming had opened so that the boy and others could send out their legacy items. Besides them, they could not send in anything else, like their nascent divinities. Since greed could never be satiated, cultivators like the purple-robed old man, who took the risk, were always present. Since they were all bound to die hundreds of years later, then he might as well step into the world that may or may not exist. But he was worried that Su Ming would not allow this, which was why he had decided to risk trying to deceive him. In truth, Su Ming had long since noticed it, which was why he had said his words earlier, but he had not done anything to bring about the death of the purple-robed old man's nascent divinity. The man had been destroyed simply because he could not withstand the mighty pressure in the tunnel. When the vortex vanished and the sky returned to normal, the boy turned his head around with a complicated expression and cast a glance at the spot where the purple-robed old man had stood. At that moment, there was no one there. The purple-robed old man had long since disappeared into the wind as ashes. The sycamore tree glowed in a shade of red despite being in the dark, but no one took any interest in it. The boy was silent. The young man in white also had a slightly complicated expression on his face. The other 4 people beside them did not speak either. A hint of sadness rose in their hearts. They knew that the purple-robed old man's death was not related to Su Ming. He had just gone seeking his own end. However, they could understand what the purple-robed old man had felt when he made his decision. In truth, All of them had thought about it at least once. If that world truly exists, then your legacies will continue in that world, and they will have my blessing. Su Ming swung his arm and cast a final glance at the cultivators before him. Then, he turned around and stepped into the air. The boy and the others bowed deeply to him as one. There was no need for them to voice their gratitude, and neither did Su Ming need it. He had just done it because he respected their conviction to pass down their legacies. When Su Ming left, the boy continued to stand beside the sycamore tree under the night sky. A smile slowly appeared on his face. There was no calculativeness to it. He stared at the sky with a peaceful look. His legacy held his blessings and hopes, wishing that his children might be able to grow to surpass him in that world which may or may not exist. The young man in white touched his now swordless scabbard with an expression on his face as if he was free. He had turned his own sword into his legacy. Even if it shattered in that world which may or may not exist, it would still turn into numerous sharp swords. Anyone who became their masters would accomplish many great feats. He did not need a scion. What he needed was just to deliver his will of a sword cultivator into that world, into the hands of those who could obtain his sword. The other four stared at the sky quietly. There were different hopes in their hearts, but they were all similar in a way too. They would never know how their legacies would shine in that world which may or may not exist. The answer was not important, however. What was important was that they no longer had any regrets. My fellow Taoists, I wish to sleep during the final 300-something years. I do not want to think about anything else, and will wait for that day to arrive, the boy said while looking at the people beside him. I'm going to wander about. I'm going to create another sword for myself during these 300-something years. The young man in white smiled faintly. It was slightly cold, but it still contained the air of him being free of his burdens. As he spoke, he wrapped his fist in his palm to the others and took a step into the air. The other four were silent for a moment before they wrapped their fists in their palms towards the boy. They turned into four long arcs that shot into the air and disappeared into the starry sky as well. When the group left, the boy sat down cross-legged under the sycamore tree and leaned against it. He watched the lights of the houses in the city, and a faint smile appeared at the corners of his lips. He slowly closed his eyes and fell into a deep sleep. The autumn breeze blew past and lifted his hair. The autumn leaves fell and turned into a blanket that covered his body. Once he closed his eyes, the entire world gradually turned indistinct. In the end, it turned into nothingness. When an unknown amount of time passed and he opened his eyes again, he was no longer under the sycamore tree, but was at the mountainside. The sky was no longer dark. The sun hung high above, showing that it was noon. The mountainside was covered in green grass. Cows and sheep formed herds. He was still a shepherd boy, but he had already forgotten his true identity at that moment. I had a dream. The boy patted his head with an enraptured expression on his face. Once Su Ming took a step into the galaxy, the space around him was lifted without a sound, as if a page in a book had been turned. When it fell again, the fourth wing had already been changed and turned into the Heavenly Fox's expanse cosmos, located in Dark Dawn's camp. Su Ming looked at the somewhat familiar galaxy and found that he could not find the bald crane. He could not help but laugh at that. A long time had passed, and with how the bald crane was, it had to have left to fool around somewhere when Su Ming turned around. He spread his will and noticed that the woman called Ziruo was beside Yang Pei. Su Ming was silent for a moment before he chose to take a step towards them. Ziruo stood on a mountain in a planet at the center of the Heavenly Fox's expanse cosmos. 100-something years might only be an instant for her, but right then, there was a miserable look on her face. Beside her was Yang Pei. His face was filled with anguish, and he looked as if he wanted to open his mouth to say something, but when he looked at Ziruo's side profile, he found that he could not say anything. After a long while, Yang Pei sighed in his heart and said slowly, "You should know that the person who appeared in Dark Dawn and Saint Defier earlier was not him. Of course I know it's not him, but I personally saw my people die in his hands. It was his face, his presence, and I saw my people's madness and resentment. What am I supposed to do?" Ziruo shuddered, and hatred appeared in her eyes. Yang Pei was silent. He did not know what he should say. Even though he knew that person was not Su Ming, and even though he was a sovereign of Dawn, it was impossible for him to make the cultivators filled with intense resentment believe in his words. If he had not been familiar with Su Ming, then even he would have been in disbelief when he saw what happened. At that moment, neither he nor the miserable Zi Ruo noticed Su Ming standing behind them. When he heard their conversation, he frowned. As he did so, he spread his will quietly through the area, making it fill the Heavenly Fox's expanse cosmos, and by extension, all the expanse cosmoses in Dark Dawn. He also spread it into Saint Defia's camp so that he could see all the 180 expanse cosmoses there. The things happening in the two expanse cosmoses appeared like pictures in Su Ming's mind. He saw that nearly half of the Heavenly Foxes had died, and it was practically the same for all the races in Dark Dawn's camp as well as the 180 expanse cosmoses in Saint Defia's camp. There were many people who hated him. During the 100-something years, they watched the brutality of the person named Su Ming as he slaughtered their people, and the depth of their resentment as well as the intensity of their killing intent towards him caused Su Ming to fall silent once he saw everything. It was clearly Old Man Extermination's doing, but Su Ming could not think of why he would do so. It did not matter how many people died in the 100-something years since the moment the disaster descended, they would all be wiped off. Besides gathering resentment, there was no other gain in performing such an act. Resentment. Su Ming frowned. After a long while, the crease between his eyebrows disappeared. Since he could not understand what was going on, it would be better if he chose not to think about it. The event had already happened, so even if he tried to resolve it, it would be useless, just like crying over spilled milk. Su Ming's expression was calm, and his heart was at ease. He only needed to know that it was not of his doing. As for the rest, Su Ming did not want to care. In fact, he could already imagine that since it was related to Old Man Extermination, there was a high possibility that it was connected to the 3 black-robed men Old Man Extermination had sent to Arid Triad. When he thought of them, Su Ming sighed softly, then turned around and left. He did not show up and interrupt Yang Pei and Zi Ruo. He turned around and stepped into space. When his foot landed, he had already left Dark Dawn's camp and stepped into the galaxy belonging to Saint Defia's camp. He went to the place where the bald crane was located. Saint Defia's camp had an expanse cosmos known as Small Falling Dust Cosmos. It was a small expanse cosmos located at the borders, near the expanse cosmos belonging to the sky barriers. Falling dust had a sacred position in Saint Defia's camp, because one of the 3 lords of Saint Defia stayed there. Fei Hua. There was only one cultivation planet in Falling Dust Cosmos. It was covered in lush greenery, which was surrounded by rivers and seas, making the planet look like a land of water. It was filled with a graceful and gentle air, but it also had a mighty presence, giving off a feeling that was no weaker than that of tall and gigantic mountains. There was a lake on the planet, and a wooden house beside it. Countless plants and flowers grew around it, and a nice fragrance filled the air, making the place overflow with vitality. There was an old woman sitting outside the wooden house. She watched the lake by herself with a gentle smile on her face as if she was going through her memories and was immersed in the past. Not too far away from her was the bald crane. It had turned into a stone and lay on the ground in a daze. Over the 100-something years, it had stared at the wooden house and the old woman just like that. It felt like it could continue staring at her until the world was destroyed and the universe was no longer around. It did not know why it stared at her, and it also did not know why it came there. Every single time the bald crane thought of that question, its heart would throb in pain, and it would feel as if it was about to be ripped apart. Once it stopped trying to figure it out, the bald crane found another form of peace in the 100-something years, one that was different from when it stayed beside Su Ming. It was no longer obsessed with crystals, no longer thought about the past it could not remember, and in fact, it decided to stay beside the old woman and accompany her for the rest of its life. Then one day, when Su Ming appeared quietly beside it and sat down silently, the stone that was the bald crane slowly transformed. Once it gained its original form, it looked over at him. Su Ming was also looking at the bald crane. He saw the tears in the bald crane's eyes. For an illusory body with no physical form, tears were a luxury. It was impossible for them to fall, so those tears were the manifestation of sadness. Su Ming. I want to cry, the bald crane murmured. Chapter 1349. If only Lulan 1 was still around. It was the first time the bald crane had said such a thing, and when Su Ming heard its words, he felt slightly miserable. He stared at the bald crane. To him, the bald crane was not a pet, but a friend. In fact, it was of equal status to Lei Chen, his eldest senior brother, second senior brother, and Hu Zi in Su Ming's heart. Their friendship was like old wine. As time passed, it became more fragrant, and once he drank it, he would be drunk, and he could laugh happily his entire life. She is. Su Ming said softly. She should be Fei Hua. I think so, the bald crane murmured. It had watched the woman for 100-something years. It did not know whether she had noticed it. The bald crane only knew that it wanted to watch her very much. There seemed to be a period of time when it had watched a woman like that before as well, and at that time, it seemed to have also noticed that there was a pair of eyes watching it. And at that time, the bald crane did not think that it was a bald crane. To it, who was a being that could transform, the bald crane's form was the one it adapted the most, but it had already forgotten whether this was really its original form. It was a form of sadness, and even more so, a form of pain. It had already forgotten its earliest appearance and forgotten how it became the bald crane. It only vaguely remembered that it did not look like that in the past, but had been a cultivator. Su Ming was silent for a while before saying softly, I still have your physical body with me. If you want to, you can fuse with it. This will bring more of your memories back. The bald crane fell silent. It had chosen not to fuse with its physical body in the past because it had a feeling that if it did so, it would have its memories restored. Once that happened, however, another set of its memories would disappear. The choice made it feel lost. Yet a voice that had been suppressed for years at a corner of its mind cried out shrilly at that moment. That voice became louder as time passed, as if it wanted to affect the bald crane's mind. Fuse with your physical body and restore your memories. You are Kong Mo, a powerful warrior who has absolutely no respect for laws in this universe belonging to harmonious Morus Alba. You are Kong Mo. Awakening Kong Mo would mean allowing yourself to wake up. It's old man extermination who caused your physical body to be torn apart. It's old man extermination who made you lose yourself after you fought with him. Wake up, find old man extermination, and fight him again. Get lost. Get out of my head. Blood capillaries appeared in the bald crane's eyes, and it swiftly began growling, suppressing the voice that was becoming louder in its heart. When it lifted its head, it looked at Su Ming. I don't want to turn into Kong Mo. As it spoke, the bald crane trembled slightly. It turned its head back and looked at the old woman sitting under the wooden house beside the lake. At that moment, she raised her head as well, and their gazes seemed to meet. Tears fell from the bald crane's eyes, but they could not reach the ground. They could only disappear into the air. Let's go. We're leaving. Damn it, I still need to find more crystals. The bald crane swiftly turned around and changed into a long arc to leave. Su Ming watched it quietly. He could sense its sorrow and all the complicated emotions in it. When he turned his head around, he looked at the old woman, and he also saw tears in her eyes. With a soft sigh, Su Ming brought his right hand and pointed at the old woman in the distance. With it, a vortex appeared at the center of the old woman's brow. Once it appeared, the ferocious figure of the five-faced beast deity rushed out from within. It turned into a long arc that charged at Su Ming. When it landed on his palm, Su Ming shook his head, turned around, and left. I've broken your curse and restored your cultivation base. When Su Ming went away, he left a few words behind. They echoed in the ears of the old woman, whose face was slowly changing to that of a teenage girl. The girl looked at the other side of the lake in a daze. It was the spot where the bald crane had lain during the 100-something years. Fei Hua did not care about the curse's dissipation, and neither did she care about her face changing. But there was no way she would not know that the person she had been waiting for had been quietly watching her for over 100 years. Even if his appearance had changed, it was impossible for her to forget that feeling, and it was also impossible for her to forget how many years she had waited for him. She did not long for him to appear before her. His companionship over the 100 years from across the lake already made her feel content. They were the warmest 100 years in her life since she had reached Avacania realm. The girl sighed softly and lowered her head. When she brought her right hand up, she spread out an ancient picture before her. The canvas were already yellow, bearing the signs of time, but it could not hide the mischievous expression on the smug boy grinning brightly as he stood beside two girls. If only Lulan was still around, the girl mumbled softly. She watched the boy in the picture for a time, then slowly closed her eyes. Oi! Su Ming left. With the bald crane, he returned to Arid Triad's Gap, and from there, they went back to Arid Triad's expanse cosmos. A familiar galaxy, a familiar presence, and a familiar morning Tao. Su Ming was familiar with everything in that place. It was his home. Ninth Summit was as magnificent as ever. Its development over the 100-something years turned it into an existence that reached the skies. The intruders from Dark Dawn and Saint Defier had returned to their own expanse cosmoses when Su Ming's formed by the three black-robed men had gone to slaughter their people. After that, they did not return. The four war-torn true worlds in Arid Triad had obtained a period of rare peace. The remaining cultivators started restoring their true worlds, but it did not look like the four great true worlds could ever return to their former glory. However, only a few people knew that the disaster was about to arrive. Only a few people were aware that several hundred years later, they would no longer exist. Su Ming stood beyond the disappeared heavenly incense rune and stared quietly in the north. After a long while, he turned around, and with the still dispirited bald crane in tow, he appeared in a seemingly calm spot in the galaxy, located beside Ninth Summit. It was a calm and quiet place. It seemed like a lake that would not billow. There were no ripples on its surface, but Su Ming still stood there for a long, long time. I'm going to meet two old acquaintances. Su Ming looked at the bald crane. It nodded and looked at Ninth Summit. I miss the Abyss Dragon. We'll meet in Ninth Summit, the bald crane said dejectedly, then turned around and left. When the bald crane disappeared, Su Ming stared at the calm galaxy and sighed softly. He noticed that once he woke up from his epiphany regarding boundless Tao realm, he was sighing for all the 100-something years he had been gone. His expression grew slightly complicated when he took a step forward. With that one step, the galaxy distorted. When it returned to normal, Su Ming felt as if he had stepped into another galaxy, one that was isolated from his true morning Tao world's will. At the instant he entered it, the three black-robed men sitting and meditating immediately lifted their heads. They were the three great apostles and had actually descended in Arid Triad under Old Man Extermination's orders quite a long time ago. However, when Su Ming was in the boy's planet and cast his divine ability under the sycamore tree, he had closed his eyes. Nothing unusual seemed to have happened at that time, but in truth, the moment he closed his eyes, he had appeared in Arid Triad. He did not execute any shocking art, but had just distorted the galaxy and bound the three black-robed men. When he stepped in and the three black-robed men looked in his direction, they stood up from their seated positions, and Su Ming appeared in front of them. More accurately speaking, he appeared in front of each of the three black-robed men. That was because in the galaxy Su Ming had distorted with his will, the three black-robed men might have seemed to be together, but they could not see each other. The world was divided into 3 layers, and each layer bound a single person. Su Ming divided himself into 3 when he arrived, sending one of himself in each layer. In the first layer was the incredibly big and built black-robed man. He looked at Su Ming and snorted coldly. The noise he made had a domineering air, and when it appeared, it shook the galaxy. Su Ming looked at the big and built figure, wrapped his fist in his palm, and said softly, I, the 4th god of Berserkers Su Ming, greet the 1st god of Berserkers. Senior Xianxia. The big and built black-robed man was silent for a while before he took off the hood over his head to reveal an extraordinary valiant face. It had an ancient air, but looked somewhat boorish. He was Xianxia. There was a slightly complicated look on his face when he looked at Su Ming, but it could be clearly seen that his mind was clear, just as clear as that of the progenitor of abyss builders. There was not a hint of his mind being controlled. Their gazes met, and after a long while, Xianxia spoke in a hoarse voice. You should not have refused to become the 5th apostle in the past. He had a dignified and domineering tone that brooked no argument, which stemmed from his personality. He was once the 1st god of Berserkers, and he had led the Berserkers to power. He had created the kingdom of Berserkers and even fought against the immortals. He had accomplished feats that could not be surpassed and created the god of Berserkers' song. Although had uttered only a few simple words while standing before Su Ming, it felt as if the laws in the galaxy around him were changing. You should not have stood against Master Extermination. You don't understand his Tao, but since you acknowledge me as the god of berserkers, come with me and meet our master. You will then understand that his Tao is the path all of us should pursue. Xianxia turned his head and looked into space. He might not be able to see Ninth Summit, but he seemed to sense the many berserkers there. We are not enemies. Let's go. Come with me and meet our Master Extermination. What is his Tao? Su Ming asked while staring at Xianxia. The universe is about to be destroyed, and harmonious Morus Alba is bound to die. His Tao is one that can create a chance for all of us to survive before we die. That chance will be slim, but if we can grab hold of it, then be it the berserkers or the other races, we will be able to continue living in another harmonious Morus Alba. Xianxia said without hesitation. That chance of survival requires the use of my appearance and my name to stir up a bloody massacre in Dark Dawn and Sanctifier? Su Ming asked softly. Xianxia fell silent, but it only lasted for 3 breaths before a firm look appeared in his eyes. That's right. Chapter 1350. Xianxia speaks with a smile of Old Man Extermination's rise to power. His Tao is wrong, Su Ming said faintly. All lives have a small chance of survival. If they truly have that chance. Su Ming did not finish his sentence. It doesn't matter whether it's wrong or right, whether you acknowledge it or not, if you serve to be an obstruction to this person who will provide this chance of survival, then no matter who you are my enemy. A brilliant glint shone in Xianxia's eyes. When he spoke, a powerful presence erupted from his body. You cannot win against me. Su Ming stared at Xianxia. No matter how astonishing his presence was, in Su Ming's eyes, he was so weak that he was like a candle flame that could be extinguished easily if Su Ming ever so desired. Xianxia closed his eyes. When he opened them again, fighting spirit burned in them. He took a step forward and instantly closed in. When he lifted his right hand, he clenched his fist and threw a punch in Su Ming's direction. When it struck space, the galaxy roared. Space distorted and tumbled about as if the galaxy had turned into an ocean. It swept up a huge wave that charged towards Su Ming as if it wanted to drown him. Su Ming did not move. He simply allowed the galaxy to distort and charge towards him, but at the instant it touched his body, it was as if he had turned invisible. Nothing about him changed. Xianxia narrowed his eyes. He moved again. This time, he appeared to Su Ming's right. He formed his left hand into the shape of a claw, then went to attack Su Ming, but his hand just seeped through Su Ming's body. What he touched was merely an illusion. It was as if Su Ming was standing before him and was real, but under his art, he turned into a mere illusion. His Tao. Oh well, since you insist in believing in his Tao and that there is that small chance of survival, I will let you leave and let you follow Old Man Extermination so that you can pursue his Tao. Su Ming closed his eyes. When he opened them, he said softly, 300-something years later, let's see, just who is wrong. Fatigue appeared on his face, and he swung his arm. Immediately, a vortex appeared not far from them. It led to heaven lacking expanse cosmos. Su Ming was tired. His heart was tired, and his body was exhausted. Everything about him screamed fatigue when he saw Xianxia's determination and saw him attack even though they should not have been enemies. All of it left Su Ming incredibly tired. He still remembered how he had sensed Xianxia's hesitation when he was still in Black Ink Planet, of how he had felt before he left the mountain. At that moment, Su Ming finally understood what Xianxia had been hesitant about. It was about Old Man Extermination's Tao, and once he chose to leave, perhaps in the depths of his heart, he had already come to believe in it. Xianxia stopped moving. He quietly pulled his hand back and stared at Su Ming with a complicated expression. He then turned around and walked towards the vortex. In his heart, he did not want to attack Su Ming either, but he believed that Old Man Extermination's choice was correct, which was why he had to attack. At the instant he stepped into the vortex, Xianxia stopped. He did not turn his head back, but he spoke slowly. You are truly, without a doubt, the god of berserkers. I am very happy to see that you have grown to reach such heights. If I am proven wrong 300 years later. Xianxia fell silent. He did not continue speaking, but instead lifted his foot and walked into the vortex until he disappeared. Disappearing with him was the galaxy created for him as well as the Su Ming in it. Within the second layer of the galaxy, Su Ming sat cross-legged in front of a black-robed man. He had already pulled back his hood to reveal a kindly face. There was gratification on his face along with a gentleness that a person would have when they looked at someone who was considered their junior. That smile and that gratification would only be worn by two people when they were before Su Ming. One of them was his elder, and the other was Xianxia. You've grown up. You're no longer the child I took away from Han Mountain City in the past. Xianxia smiled faintly and stared at Su Ming as he spoke with a sentimental tone. Su Ming looked back at Xianxia in a daze. This person was his master in its truest sense. The old man had taught him how to calm and clear his heart, and it was this old man who had taught him to experience changes of the heart. If he did not do it, Su Ming would have definitely not accomplished his feats. It was also the old man before him who had allowed him to experience the warmth of home. He brought Su Ming with him see what it meant to be powerful and showed the land of shamans to tell him what it meant to hunt. After Su Ming went missing, the old man had stepped into the land of shamans many times to search for him, until the moment he went missing himself. Without him, the 9th summit was no longer complete. Without him, Su Ming and his senior brothers always felt pain in their hearts. Su Ming stared at the old man and remembered his journey while searching for Xianxia in Divine Essence Star Ocean. In the end, he had reached the 5th ocean, and only during the very final moments he was there did Su Ming come to realize that Xianxia was there, but he had not noticed his master. Master! Su Ming's eyes were slightly moist as he murmured that one word. You resent me for not going to all of you, I know. Your eldest senior brother could take up the responsibility as your leader. Your second senior brother needed to experience even more trials, and as for Hu Zi, he is still young, but his potential is so great that it surpasses that of your eldest and second senior brothers. If he doesn't change that troublemaking attitude of his, however, it will be difficult for him to accomplish great things. Only you. Your accomplishments are something I never expected. When I learned from Old Man Extermination that you have become the strongest in this eon, I was very happy. I remember arguing privately with Xianxia at that time about whether you belong to the Berserkers or whether you solely belong to the 9th Summit. I can tell you that he is very happy. He is happy that such a powerful warrior appeared from the Berserkers, Xianxia said with a smile. His kindness and the gratified expression on his face were real. Su Ming had already grown up. In fact, he had become so smart that he was already like an old monster. His wisdom was so great that it was larger than the galaxy. He was a darkness that night could not cover, but when he was before his elder and Xianxia, Su Ming felt as if he had returned to the past. He was still the child from Dark Mountain and the youngest in the 9th Summit. Old Man Extermination's Tao isn't as what Xianxia had said. It isn't that accurate. Xianxia isn't very certain whether Extermination's Tao will be successful either. When Xianxia spoke, no surprise appeared on Su Ming's face. Xianxia could sense what Xianxia had said. It was something Su Ming had realized from the moment he saw Xianxia. Compared to Xianxia, Xianxia's presence was not great, but there was a feeling about him that bordered on bizarre. Even Su Ming had to observe him carefully before he could tell what it was. After all, change of heart was an art created by Xianxia. He did not choose it, but only believes in it, because if he did not believe in it, his beliefs would crumble. Not everyone can be free of their burdens before they die. Sometimes that burden isn't their own lives, but for the most important things in their hearts. Because of that, Xianxia cannot take a gamble. It is just like how the 9th Summit and your tribe are the most important things to you. To Xianxia, the most important thing is the Berserkers. He does not want their bloodline to end. That is why Old Man Extermination went to him. Once he made Xianxia understand everything, he spoke of the small chance of survival, and naturally, Xianxia chose to obey. Xianxia is very smart. You are one of the paths for the Berserkers, and he is the other one. He does not care who is right and who is wrong. What he cares about is that in the end, someone must be right, Xianxia said slowly while looking at Su Ming. There was a profound look on his face. Old Man Extermination came to me when I experienced my 9th change of heart. He turned all the ideals I had gained through my various changes of heart unstable, and he planted the thought that I couldn't fuse them together in my heart. That is why I have to see whether he is correct. If he is, then my thoughts will be clear and I will complete my Tao. If he isn't, my thoughts will still be clear, and I will still complete my Tao. What exactly do cultivators cultivate? To me, what we cultivate are simply beliefs. Xianxia harbored no guilt in using your appearance to slaughter those from Dark Dawn and Saint Defier. He was not merciful, and he couldn't be merciful. This is related to his personality. Since he wants to gamble, he must put everything on the line. I don't like Lu Yue. He's far too sinister. I don't care if he has an evil heart, but that sinister and cold presence makes me disgusted when he kills. He never feels any sort of discomfort, because it is just what he wants. After all, before you he was the one known as the strongest in this eon. Xianxia smiled softly and looked at Su Ming. Without him even needing to ask anything, Xianxia told him all of ITDO what you should do. The path is under your feet, and no one can interfere with it. They're not allowed to. Those who do, just kill them. Xianxia stood up slowly and cast a glance at Su Ming again. I'll be leaving now to return to Old Man Extermination. Since he insists on interfering with my 9th change of heart, then I will either cut him down, or he will do it to me. This is my business. You can't interfere with it, and you don't need to. 300 years later. If I fail, come and take revenge for me. That will be enough. Xianxia smiled in a manner that said he was free of his burdens and swung his arm, then walked into space. Tell your eldest senior brother that a head isn't a symbol of his aspirations. Not growing, it is just him not being able to reconcile with himself. What does he think he is? Does he think it's cool? It's just plain stupid. And your second senior brother too. He had long since gone past his change of heart regarding love. Phantoms might receive the disaster of love most commonly, but he can't act this way. He just had his heart hurt once, so tell him to stop moaning about nothing. I can sometimes see him, and even I get angry when I see him being so useless. As for Hu Zi, tell him to sleep more. Entering dreams is his Tao. When he needs to drink, let him drink. When he should sleep, tell him to sleep. When he wants to peek, let him. Why isn't he practicing his cultivation but getting addicted to fighting? With all that fighting, his whole body is covered in blood. Does he think it makes him look charming? Xianxia reached Su Ming's ears from a distance, and a smile slowly appeared on his face. He watched his master disappear, but his words still lingered in his ears, which made his smile grow brighter. That was the Xianxia Su Ming knew. That was their master. He did not have any inhibitions with his words, and when he scolded them, it made Su Ming feel as if he had returned to the 9th summit of the past. Suddenly, Xianxia poked his head out from space. By the way, I don't like Lu Yue. If you can kill him on the way, it'd save me the time of killing him myself. Once he said that, he disappeared once again. Su Ming was momentarily stunned, then his smile became even wider. He stared at the spot where Xianxia had disappeared, and the love of a disciple for his master was very obvious in his expression. Master, don't worry. Lu Yue will certainly die.